Ciao a tutti e benvenuti. Insieme scopriremo come funziona Dedit, la piattaforma che ti permette di notarizzare facilmente tutti i tuoi documenti sulla blockchain. Per iniziare devi semplicemente rilasciare un file al centro della pagina o fare clic sul pulsante per scegliere un documento dal tuo dispositivo. Se non è mai stato notarizzato, Dedit calcola l'impronta digitale del documento, hash, e ti consentirà di procedere cliccando su Registra. Ora puoi personalizzare la registrazione inserendo una breve descrizione, puoi scegliere quale blockchain preferisci utilizzare per la tua registrazione e se desideri mantenere i file archiviati in modo sicuro in cloud. Se non sei già iscritta a un piano, scegli il metodo di pagamento e procedi con la registrazione. In questo caso abbiamo attivo il piano Algorand Free. Ora che la tua registrazione è pronta, puoi invitare altre persone a firmare la transazione generando un link e semplicemente inviando loro un'email direttamente dalla piattaforma. Puoi anche scaricare un certificato di notarizzazione che contiene tutte le informazioni importanti, come l'hash del documento, il timestamp e così via. La cosa più importante sono i 2 codici QR che ti permettono di verificare facilmente tutte le informazioni online e i dettagli della transazione. Puoi anche decidere di inviare questo certificato a chiunque sia interessato via email direttamente da Dedit. Ora possiamo andare alla nostra cronologia delle transazioni, dove possiamo controllare tutti i dettagli della registrazione appena avvenuta e verificare, per esempio, che la descrizione sia quella che avevamo scelto. Se hai deciso di mantenere il file originale sul cloud, puoi scaricarlo in qualsiasi momento dalla sezione Custodia del tuo profilo personale. Nella tua dashboard personale puoi controllare tutti i pagamenti effettuati e selezionare il piano più adatto sulle blockchain supportate dalla piattaforma. Scrivere sulla blockchain è facile con Dedit. Cosa stai aspettando? Provalo ora.
Buongiorno a tutti e insomma iniziamo la giornata col primo panel del blockchain Forum Italia. Il macro argomento è diciamo ecosystem and networks e oggi insomma abbiamo veramente 3 ospiti, amici, relatori di eccezione che vado subito a presentarvi, che sono Montse Guardia, che è la General Director di Alastria Ecosystem. Buongiorno Montse, benvenuta.
Buongiorno Pietro, grazie.
Abbiamo Pietro Grassano, Business Director Solution Europa di Algorand. Buongiorno Pietro.
Buongiorno a tutti.
E abbiamo Jerome, Grilleres, General Manager Europa di VeChain. Good morning Jerome.
Good morning, buongiorno a tutti.
Buongiorno. Allora, l'argomento del panel di oggi è appunto interoperabilità tra le varie piattaforme. Insomma, succederà nel prossimo futuro, quindi cercheremo di capire con i nostri ospiti appunto se l'interoperabilità tra le varie piattaforme blockchain sarà diciamo un qualcosa a cui si tenderà e capiremo un po' le loro opinioni. Quindi lascio subito la parola a Chiara Ventura, che è l'account manager di blockchainitalia.io, che sarà la moderatrice del panel. Ciao Chiara, e ci vediamo dopo, seguiteci anche dopo perché avremo un'interessante intervista, lecture in esclusiva con il professor Silvio Micali, fondatore di Algorand. Quindi ci vediamo dopo. Ciao Chiara e buon lavoro.
Ciao Pietro, grazie per l'introduzione e benvenuti Montse, Pietro e Jerome. Welcome Jerome, Pietro and Montse. This panel will be in English and I would start by going around this virtual table and ask each and every one of you to explain in very simple terms what is interoperability on blockchain. Explaining it as if you were talking to a newbie, to a person who didn't really come across the concept of interoperability yet. I would start with the ladies. So, please.
Thank you, Chiara, and I'm very pleased to be here in the panel with Pietro and Jerome. It's a pleasure. And myself, I think interoperability. No, we can say interconnectivity, and it's not that. No, we are not connecting blockchains. We have been working over these years in building, what is the chain blockchain. No, so technologies that are sending blocks around the net, around internet, on top of internet, but the way how they send these blocks is different, and there are different ways of doing it. And due to that, we are now in the moment to create something that talks between them. No? So thinking about two different languages, and we need a translator in the middle. How we do this translation between different languages? Thinking about that, translate that idea to the net, to the blockchain. No? How we do different technologies of doing the blockchain, talk between them. How we do that is what we call the interoperability. We want that they talk between them. And to do so, we need to create software on top of that. We need to create methods, and we need to create something that is quite complex, that is called governance. So I will let it like that, so my colleagues Pietro and Jerome can do a little bit further on this idea.
Yeah, sure. Jerome, would you like to add something to the definition and what Montse explained till now?
Sure, yeah, I can take a little bit a different
Jerome,
angle.
Sorry.
I can take a slightly different angle to complement what was just said. Basically, blockchain is a technology that was invented to build trust, and the trust relies on the fact that a blockchain is built on nodes. Some people could call them miners. I'd like to call them nodes. When you're part of a blockchain as a node, either by writing the block or simply by observing or sending transactions to the blockchain, you understand what's going on, and then you have a certain level of trust. You can never have 100%, but more often than not, you are very close to 100%. So you consider it's okay. But once you're inside your blockchain, let's say you're inside the VeChain Thor blockchain, or inside Ethereum, or inside Bitcoin, then you trust your environment. But then something is happening in another environment. How can you go and trust what's happening, or someone telling you this is happening on Ethereum, this is happening on Bitcoin? So the concept of interoperability is to find ways to give a node in one blockchain or a participant in one blockchain the guarantee that the information that is receiving is really happening on another blockchain. So that's kind of the low level. And when you're talking about higher level, when you're using business applications, for instance, it really means very similar to what was said. How do you translate the language, and how do you trust data and information that is passed to you as guaranteed by another blockchain?
Of course. So thank you for your take on this. Pietro, would you like to add something, maybe a different angle to the definition, to make it very clear to our audience what interoperability is in blockchain?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, I will just complement what has already been said very well by my colleagues before. And the way I look at interoperability is a way to avoid the bubble tower, right? We have a world with a plurality of protocols. Each one of them is probably good in doing something because it has been conceived for specific purposes. It's like languages, right? You prefer English for rock music because it's a synthetic kind of language. You prefer probably Italian for opera, and you prefer French for Baroque music. It's because each language has its own specific purpose. Montse, you probably prefer Spanish for specific, I don't know, what kind of music do you suggest?
I will suggest, well, let's talk Spanish guitar.
The Spanish guitar, okay. So at the end of the day, I mean, avoiding the bubble tower, avoiding the fragmentation requires to create bridges among the protocols in order to bring what from one blockchain to the other, in order to allow transactions and allow that an asset that is represented in one blockchain, tokenized on one blockchain, can be recognized and not double spent, because this is the reason for a blockchain existing, right? It's a machine that avoids double spending, essentially by design, can be recognized among different protocols. So yes, it's about building trust. It's about often recognizing that a consensus mechanism of one blockchain is different from the consensus mechanism of another blockchain, but there can be solutions and situations in order to bridge the gap and allow transactions cross-chain and allow that an asset moves from one chain to the other. Sometimes you also need standards in order to do that, right? So there is also an effort in terms of standardization, which is an important one.
Yeah. So in order to bring the best of both worlds or multiple worlds all together, we need this standardization. And thank you for bringing up the topic of interoperability, the topic of standardization, because this is exactly what I was going to ask Montse next. Because Alastria is very committed in this effort of achieving standardization and via that interoperability. So Montse, what can you tell us about the steps that Alastria has undertaken in this standardization effort, and what are the major developments?
Yeah, I will say it. So when we found Alastria, Alastria was founded in October 2017. So it's 3 years last 10 days, last Saturday. So we are very happy on that. And during this travel, what we have been done over these years, and the main mission about Alastria was that, okay, we know technology, we know blockchain is there, how it's going to evolve, but what is important also is working together in the same time on building what is the legal framework, the understanding of what is happening, and also building what is the normalization. So how we are going to introduce standardization, how is going to evolve that. Instead of first doing the tech and then after do the standard, we were thinking if we can do that together, working together with the legal mindset and the tech mindset and the economics mindset, we can build something that can be sustainable. So for us, standardization means that, means get to the point that we have a model so everybody can follow, and at the end we can reach this understanding on languages. We were talking about that they can talk between them. So if we can follow a model, we can guarantee that the tech and the future will talk between them. And this is how we have been working in parallel. Not just developing understanding on tech, but also developing understanding on how we can bring that to the society, how that will be used, and in which standards. And for that, also tell you that one standard takes years. So what we have been looking after is to reduce this initial setup of standards, doing it in this way.
Okay, clear. Thank you. Even though, of course, the standardization aspect is very important and has to go hand in hand with the technology development, and it's going to take a few years, as you clearly and very correctly said, Montse, and thank you for that. There are some, of course, technological developments in this field as well. Some protocols have already developed some projects, and there is a lot of turmoil on this. In fact, I was going to go back to Jerome and ask about the VeChain approach to interoperability, because I've read the VeChain development plan, and I see that there is a distributed cross-blockchain communication protocol, or DCCP, which is under development. Can you tell us more about that, or what is VeChain's approach to interoperability?
Yeah, absolutely. So before just to take a step back, interoperability, as we define it, you can take it from two different ways. You have the way where it's done by a centralized entity. Imagine, for instance, you want to move Bitcoin into Ethereum, for instance, you might go to an exchange. So you're sending your token to the exchange in return is giving you a token on the Ethereum blockchain. So they are providing the interoperability. It's a very basic service, but then you can trust that both transactions really happened, and you rely on a third party. Of course, you can build the bridges that are much more complex and much more advanced than this, but then you still rely on the middleman, I would say. VeChain's approach, I mean, we started by developing DCCP. Now we are moving to a bit broader approach that's still under R&D. I have to confess it's a very challenging topic, very complex topic. So we don't have the final answer to that. We are quite humble about it. But basically, our approach is to have a more distributed, in other words, how do you let the VeChain Thor blockchain communicate with other protocols which have other consensus mechanism in such a way that you don't rely on a third party. Basically, we are trying to implement the BFT, the Byzantine fault tolerance principle, which, without going into details, means that you rely on the fact that participants may or may not operate trustfully. So you have to find an algorithm that will not make too many assumptions about it. So that's currently the approach of VeChain, trying to find a way to communicate with blockchain, but without the intervention of a third party.
Of course. Thank you, Jerome. So perhaps we're going to talk more about the VeChain's interoperability project later on, together when we will be able to explain a little more about your R&D right now. Thank you for that. I will go to Pietro now. We'll talk about the middleman, not relying to the middleman. We're going to talk more about that with Silvio Micali later on. Pietro, I would ask you about the recent news about Tether's integration with the Algorand protocol, where if we can consider this part of the integration, this integration part of the strategy to go towards an interoperability of the networks, and what's your take on interoperability? What is Algorand's take?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tether is a very important element of integration with the whole crypto ecosystem, I would say, generally speaking, right? So, and you may consider this as a piece of, broad interoperability in the sense that it allows to bridge some gaps with other market participants and so on and so forth. I wouldn't call it immediately an interoperability project in the technological sense that we are talking about now. Tether decided to launch on Algorand, so to tokenize on Algorand USDT, like Circle decided to tokenize on Algorand the USDC, like other stable coins and other token issuers decided to use Algorand because of its intrinsic features of scalability, decentralization, and security, cryptographic security, the speed of the protocol, the fact that you have a smart contract tokenization and transactions all in layer one, so with an additional security compared to other ways of doing it. But of course, it enhances the breadth of assets that you can bring to the blockchain. So it's, if you want, it's related to the tokens that can be implemented on Algorand's blockchain. And generally speaking, I would say it's also it's part of our strategy, but and more important part is something that Silvio is going to be talking later on, which is the logic of decentralized token bridge. Some interoperability projects tend to rely, again, as Jerome said correctly, centralizers, which is at the end of the day inconsistent with the logic of a blockchain. I mean, why do you use a blockchain if you then need to use a centralized? Just stick with the centralized world. On the other end, what you can conceive is a situation where you say you are decentralized, but you take a picture of external blockchains at a certain moment, and you try to respect what happens in that picture at that moment. While another idea is the one of taking into consideration the external consensus mechanism and create a bridge in which your consensus mechanism takes into consideration what happens outside and respect the fact that there is a consensus mechanism outside that is different from your one, and vice versa. Once you create this, you create a decentralized token bridge in which the decentralization allows tokens to flow from one chain to the other in a pretty simple way. Of course, this allows to avoid logics of hash time locks, which often in transactions are thought as a way to create atomic transactions which are no atomic at all, because at the end of the day, you find yourself subject to denial of service attacks. Yeah, I would say that it's a fascinating topic. As long as we agree on the fact that let's start from something. Let's start, for instance, from the interoperability of tokens from one chain to the other. This can be an element of strategy.
Thank you, Pietro. Thank you all for your inputs on this, for your contribution, and have clarified the topic to our public, and that gave us an overview of what is happening in your ecosystems about interoperability. I would now go back to Montse, and I would jump to the topic of the business models that can be enabled by a full interoperability, because it's evident from what we have said that blockchain technology has the potential to become even more disruptive than it is, and enable different business models only with this cross communication, with this interoperability. If as Pietro was saying, it is really distributed in a distributed fashion, maintaining the property of trust and integrity. But if we can achieve that, and I'm sure we will in the very near future, what business models do you think, Montse, that will be enabled by this?
I think we are starting on this topic, no? Business models. There is lots to be done still, no? I think that it's true that we recognize that the technology is there. We recognize we work in standardizing and in make it happen more broadly. But in the moment that we get or we reach this interoperability, what will happen is the current situation right now. What we have is all the business models are based on use cases, no? How you use for one case, no? And there is lots of companies who has their private blockchains, or also semi-permissioned, public permissioned blockchains, or permissioned. But the case is you do business only because you target one use, no? One use of several companies delivering to the market. In the moment that we can interoperate, we will be building together, no? Different use cases in a different way of doing it, and it will be fantastic because we will have this opportunity to really change the way of thinking about digital economy, no? And I will think that this is going to happen in the same moment that we really develop the digital identity, no? That will be the same. We will be change the mindset on how we, let's say, consumers go into a digital economy, do purchasing, trust the data that we are getting. So this is what I see, no? That we are going to build a new way of doing digital economy based on business cases that are working in different, as we said before, different consensus algorithms, no? So reducing this layer between on-chain and off-chain, no? That is what is going to happen.
Thank you. I would then jump to Jerome and ask whether, since we have said that we have to allow this interoperability, as Montse was saying, we have many different blockchains that have various problems intercommunicating, and in the future, I think there will be even more valid blockchain protocols which will gain market share. And there are now some projects like Polkadot or Cosmos that there are projects that have started looking specifically at interoperability. Do you think that this is a winning strategy, or do you think having a project like this won't be a winning strategy in the long term?
Yeah, Polkadot and Cosmos, I think, are a great project. In a nutshell, what they do is they act as hubs between blockchains. So your blockchain can go and plug into this hub. So it's very interesting because they are the middleman, but they're a centralized point that acts in a decentralized way. So, it's kind of a mix between the two approaches. So for that, I think this is already, first of all, a quite clever solution. Also, as Pietro said, there, different languages in real life are more, specialized in some topics. Same applies to blockchain. Maybe Polkadot and Cosmos, they are more specific to token exchange, this type of communication. And of course, they are up and running. So I think they have a heads up. They're a great project. I think it is a winning strategy. Nevertheless, I think there will be other alternative strategy like the one VeChain is trying to pursue in a more decentralized way. And we're not really competing with those two. We are really complementary because we focus on data exchange, and mechanisms. And processes. So this is really our focus. So I think they're very good at this, just the same as, Bitcoin was invented over 10 years ago now. It's still the most popular, maybe the most reliable when it comes down to token transfer. So it was a winning strategy at the time, but then you have others that will emerge going forward. So I think they're here to stay, yes.
But there is no, with VeChain, you are exploring another path to interoperability. So you won't go. You don't think that you maybe I don't know if I can ask you that right now. If you see that you will collaborate with Polkadot or Cosmos, or use some sort of hub like that in the future.
No, I think for certain use cases, definitely we would use. Like we are not closing the door at all. That's not my point. My point is more for the core of what we do. We will probably try different routes. The core is like business use, like business application. We probably need a separate solution for that. But in some instances, definitely Cosmos and Polkadot are quite useful to us.
Perfect, thank you. Pietro, it's your turn now, and I would ask you something a little bit different. Montse just mentioned before the topic of permissioned and permissionless blockchains that have to communicate together. I was going to say exactly that. Till a few years ago, the choice of the firms approaching blockchain technology was to use private blockchains mainly because of their needs. And now more and more companies are watching at public permissionless blockchain. Do you see a synergy among these two types of blockchains, and what is Algorand doing in this sense?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the old times in which every company was trying to put in place their own intranet, and then they realized that yes, there is something called the internet, and maybe we can use this for our purposes. Yeah, it's a little bit the same process, and I think that then the limit or the choice is often done depending on regulatory type of constraints, right? So there can be different types of implementation between what is private, what is public, and so on. And at the end of the day, one big tenet is you are private as long as your cryptography allows you to be, right? Otherwise, you're not private, albeit you label yourself private. And in that, also the other tenet is that, like in everyday life, for each one of us, we have a public persona and a private persona, right? And the two articulate themselves in the early morning, you don't want to see me because I'm very private. At a certain point after my shower and dressing up, I start to be a bit more public and so on and so forth. And throughout the day, this is moving. This articulation between private and public is true also for the implementations of blockchain protocols. Our approach is to, of course, start with a public permissionless protocol. The mainnet of Algorand is a public permissionless protocol, but you can think of, and we have implementations of private instances being put in place for whatever reasons, which we do not control. It's the client that controls it, right? They decide because of regulatory reasons that they want to have, I don't know, they are servers in a specific area. The services being given to a specific set of citizens, a specific set of companies, and so on and so forth. And the important thing is to have as well the internal interoperability within the same protocol between the public mainnet and the private instances. This is a concept that we call the co-chains, right? Where the private instances are actually seen as nodes from the public mainnet. You cannot see what the transactions within the private co-chains are, but from a private co-chain A and a private co-chain B, you can anyway transfer assets, do transactions through the public mainnet, right? This is the overall concept of how we articulate private and public in an interoperable manner. Yeah, so, and this probably goes a bit beyond the logics of standardization. So the sort of risk of having a polarization between doing a bubble tower about interoperability. Each one of us does interoperability his own way.
His own way. Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, fantastic. We have the second degree problem. We just move the problem somewhere else. And on the other hand, the standardization as normalization. The word normalization reminds me of the Soviet Union of the 70s under Brezhnev, in which there was, after the period of the 60s, where you had the Czechoslovakia situation and so on and so forth, there was the normalization. Normalization meant, okay, you do the thing the way I want, which is not exactly what we want. So being able to articulate all these concepts, keeping in mind the big tenets at the end of the road, and as well the reality. So again, articulating private and public, for instance, having the need of respecting the consensus mechanism of one protocol to the other, and so on and so forth, is to me the way to progress in this discussion.
Thank you. I see that we, Montse, maybe you want to say something about that concept of normalization that Pietro was mentioning, since you brought it up, and
Yeah.
then
I think he's completely right in one thing. In the software engineering, no, or telecommunication engineering, we have been always, no, when it's true, when there is a problem in the software you cannot solve, you move to the next layer, no. So when electronics, no, when we did in security, no, we did a strong black box firewalls, and suddenly we move that electronics issues in some cases to a software, no, to a software issue, no, from hardware to software, or the other case. And in this case also it's true, no, we know how to do on-chain, but there is true that the interface, no, the reaction between human being, no, a front layer, and then the chain, there is still layers of software that are off-chain, no, that are not in the blockchain, and there is still a work there, no, in this area of software. So we have a lot to be done yet in terms of engineering, no, but it's true that we need to keep in mind the general architecture, no, and this is why for me standardization is important to do it at the same time, not later, no. okay, we can have standards de facto, but it's important that from the beginning we are taking a view that is architectural view, no? So in terms of architecture, I need to know if I'm going to build a big space, an open house, no? Where I'm going to put the kitchen and I'm going to put the living room together with all open, or I'm going to segment, no? And decide, no, the kitchen needs to be in this part of the house, needs to have this type of connectivity, because I need to have to allow to enter the gas for the cooking. So you see, there is different ways of doing the software architecture of all that. And in terms of interoperability, we need to take it in a view, in a helicopter view, an architecture view, in order to avoid what Pietro was saying, no? That to move problems that are not easy to solve to the next door, no? And then we are creating software that is not really robust, no? Or reliable. So yes, there is a lot to be work on that, no? On guaranteeing that the software is reliable, and for that is need to work in standardization. I think so.
Thank you all. I see that we have it's time to move to the next, which will be an interview with Silvio Micali. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for the illuminated input that you brought to Blockchain Forum Italia. I was very humbled to be with you here today. Thank you for that. It was really emotional for me. And now I would ask Pietro if he could just jump in again, Pietro Azzara, just for the closing remarks, and then we will move to the next part. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you all. Grazie a tutti, è stata una discussione molto interessante, insomma abbiamo sentito tre punti di vista sicuramente molto autorevoli e molto importanti, e quindi insomma grazie ancora a tutti, grazie Chiara, e adesso appunto passiamo al prossimo panel, diciamo col professor Silvio Micali. Grazie ancora a tutti.